In today's talk, I will be introducing the new and experimental digital resource, the Romantic Period Poetry Archive, or RAPPER for short. RAPPER is predicated on the concept of global romanticism. The first thing you see when accessing the resource is a world map, deliberately not centered on Europe or the Americas. From the outset, the project has not been primarily concerned with tracking the creation and then reception of any particular national literature, but rather in showing the creation of all manifestations of Romanticism, wherever they occur, with all their local, national, and international contexts, and showing the complex interactions and dialogue between these intertwined works and contexts. As Ben Hutchinson reminds us, and I quote, "To do full justice to Romanticism as a periodic category, one must de facto be a comparatist." End quote. And in RAPPER, I have found that comparative literary studies and digital humanities methodologies are a promising combination. The former, as it provides us with the conceptual framework for thinking about different contexts globally, and the latter, as it offers us tools to conduct cross-linguistic computational literary analysis. For RAPPER, global is meant in the sense of Felicity Nussbaum's concept of critical global studies, a spatially and conceptually expanded paradigm in which dialogue and exchange, rather than influence and reception, are the dominant categories. Of course, European Romanticism still plays a major role in this setting, and national contexts remain important, but the focus of RAPPER is to conceptualize Romanticism as a global, deeply interconnected artistic phenomenon, that is, as a period in international literary history. RAPPER embraces a romantic Weltliteratur by bringing well and lesser-known poets, their poems and contexts from all parts of the world into conversation, and thus encourages the telling of bigger stories. This zooming out not only brings works, authors, languages, and cultures into conversation, but also highlights the frequently non-linear modes of transmission, circulation, and reception of literature, understood here in global terms as the expressions of a culture in a variety of forms. Another aspect to the term global is in the sense used by German comparatist Angelika Corbino-Hoffmann when she speaks of a global text. Corbino-Hoffmann argues that the task of contextualizing literary texts, that is, explicitly recording contexts, place, time, contemporaneous events, known connections, can mitigate the inevitable loss of the situational or intended contexts of literary texts that occurs over time and distance. The result of this open-ended, ongoing effort of contextualization replaces the traditional annotated text with a spatial construct that embeds text in a dense network of contacts and relationships that can be mapped out along historical and spatial axes, while also taking into account the theoretical and methodological origins of the contextualization efforts. This construct of a source text with all of its contexts she terms global text. RAPPER models both these understandings of global as it pertains to Romantic period poetry. The theory of the global text can be used as a working metaphor for establishing a shared framework of points of contact on a genetic and typological basis. That is, based on actual intertextual relations between texts, as well as typological relations based on genre, poetic form, subject matter, motifs, topics, and so on. This network of contacts transcends national and linguistic boundaries. The idea of contextuality and the global text is particularly attractive for a digital humanist as it lends itself to the latest computational methods of layering semantic annotations of various levels of granularity and abstraction onto texts. By applying digital humanities approaches, the construct of the global text can be expressed in a network or graph of interrelated or layered annotations that feed into each other. The core of RAPPER is a full-text database of poems. Because of the multilingual nature of the project, all of them have an English translation as a minimum. Further translations are of course part of the network of contexts and can be added as the resource grows. There are currently 621 poets from 69 countries in RAPPER, representing roughly 40 languages. as well as a stack of tools that allow for the open-ended contextualization of these poems by making it possible to record known contexts in a formal way. In DH terms, the full-text collection of poems itself will be a fairly traditional corpus encoded in TI-XML for reuse and long-term preservation purposes. The list of poets was compiled manually, drawing on a number of literary histories and reference works, such as the Princeton Encyclopedia of Poetry and Poetics, after initial attempts to source such lists online produced unsatisfactory results. Of course, there will always be built-in biases in such a corpus, least of all its Western Northern-centric basis of selection, which may well have been superseded on a national level. One measure to mitigate against this is to allow users to suggest additional content. I'd now like to briefly outline some of the digital humanities methods, namely multilingual DH and semantic web technologies, that make this combined full text with contextualization approach possible. So firstly, multilingual DH. In Rapper, I have begun work on multilingual translation alignment, sequence alignment for the detection of text reuse and other forms of intertextuality, more generally, within and across literatures, and natural language processing applications, among them phonemic transcriptions, morphosyntactic annotation, and the detection of meter, rhyme, and stanzaic structures. The aim is to arrive at a cross-linguistic representation of poetic form and content by using both automated processes as well as inviting user contributions. Fortunately, the study of poetry is an active field of research in the digital humanities. There are a number of language-agnostic tools, as well as multilingual large language models, such as BERT or OpenAI's ChatGPT, that offer the potential for cross-linguistic annotation, topic modeling, clustering, and alignment. Initial experiments with translation alignment have proven promising and contribute towards the overall aim of facilitating large-scale semantic annotation to help establish a shared representation of the domain. Although there have been some breakthroughs in multilingual DH, particularly with regard to the application of large language models, much DH work in lesser researched and less well-funded languages and literatures remains challenging, which is why I have come to view multilingual DH as best considered a collaborative effort. It requires domain expertise and thus the possibility of user contributions, as well as the option of iterative approaches for layering annotations coming from a range of sources onto the corpora. In Rapper, I have invited input from and have sought collaboration with domain experts from various traditions, and I am hoping to recruit some potential collaborators. It is through these collaborations that I hope to address some of the main challenges of distant reading in a corpus such as Rapper. Rapper is designed to accommodate different levels of granularity and abstraction, from modeling individual instances of contact between poems to the connection based on poetic form or subject matter. It does this using semantic web technologies, a way of organizing knowledge through the use of ontologies. The concepts and connections we want to model in Rapper range from instances of poets, poems, translators, publishers, networks, groups or schools, magazines, contemporaneous events, to detailed representations of individual poems, among many others. Ontologies provide a unified mechanism for the cross-linguistic representation of the poems, while maintaining the ability to describe them adequately within their cultures and poetic traditions without oversimplification. As well as formally expressing these contextualizations, this type of semantic modeling can also accommodate expert contributions and facilitate the querying and publication of the annotated poetic corpora for reuse and further inquiry. Through the layering of semantic annotations, the system facilitates not only the context-sensitive modeling of the type of contextualization, for example by layering the cause of an event over the event itself, but might eventually allow us to zero in on the functions or rather work that is performed by a particular context as the network evolves and matures. For example, a revision to a poem that can be linked to a context through a series of connections. My current focus is to work towards exposing the rich layered network of annotations in Wrapper in a user interface. In addition to what I've already outlined, this interface will also allow users to add new contexts by flexibly attaching, that is, importing context sources, categorizing them, and defining their functions as precisely as possible. Finally, I have many future plans for Wrapper. I'm particularly excited to start experimenting with visualizations of poetic networks, including social networks or heat maps of clusters as they emerge along a variety of properties. I'm also keen to employ spatiotemporal tools in an attempt to more closely integrate the historical and geographical components of the model through integration on platforms such as Open Historical Map. I'm also interested in using network analytical measures to relate national literary traditions within the global literary landscape of the period. Finally, I'd also love to explore potential pedagogical applications in teaching the global Romantic period. So to finish, if you go to the website www.romanticperiodpoetry.org at the moment, you will see that a map is used as a basic visual access point. But ultimately, I hope to expand this type of visualization to include historical maps of poetic forms, of contacts, paths of transmission, circulation, and exchange that highlight the connectedness of Romantic poetic traditions. With the help of some of the DH methods discussed in this talk, I hope that we can expand our view of national and European Romanticism with a networked global one. Thank you very much.